Real excited to continue our Lego modular building series with a classic, the Green Grocer. I did not buy the Green Grocer when it came out in 2008, but I've been thinking about getting it for many years. What I've done over about the past probably 12 months is part it out. I had a lot of parts here already that I got from other sets, things that I wasn't using. And then I was able to get the parts list online and figure out what I needed. And then I just parted it out, looking at Bricklink for deals. And it took me a few months, but now we have all the pieces we need to build this set. Now, how we're going to do this today, again, we did not buy this originally. And I parted it out. So I did not get the minifigures, and I also did not get the printed instructions. But Lego puts all instructions for all sets on their website, which we've downloaded here. We're going to use this to dive into this build. One change right off the bat, we are going to put this on a MILS plate. So we did not get the base plates that are called for in this set. Now, the first thing we need to do is get organized. So we take all of our pieces and organize them where we can find them easily on the table. Organize them by color and by shape. So one issue is I'm going through the parts list. Turns out I miscounted. I need about 9 more of these windows than what I have. So we're going to cheat here. And eventually I'm going to order some more windows. But for now, this Home Alone set has a ton of these, and I don't think it's going to be that big a deal if I'm going to sneak in here and take just a few windows out of this set. In fact, I need 9 more. We're just going to pop out this window right here. So what will happen is then I will take these windows from here and go and use them in the build that I'm doing right now. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to order 9 more windows off of Bricklink, and we'll replace this in a week or two whenever we get that order in. Okay, we're ready. We've got all the pieces laid out that we need for the Green Grocer modular. Now, before we dive in, I want to show you about a couple substitutions we made to cut down on cost. So we have a bunch of these. These are not called for in the set. This is going to replace, I've got another one in a different color here. These 1x2 bricks with channels called for 52 of these in the sand green in this set. Well, those things cost $5 a piece, roughly. And I wasn't going to spend $250 to get 50 of them. That's just crazy. So, and I think I've seen other people make this change. Instead of doing that piece, we're going with these masonry bricks. We'll see how it looks. The other substitution we made is do have one of these. There was about 40 some of these 1x8 sand green bricks called for in the set, but these are running $6.50 a pop, and that's crazy. So instead of doing that, I just got a bunch of extra 1x4 bricks. These are going about 15 cents each right now. So we're going to make that substitution and dive into this build and see how it goes. Let's look at our build setup before we dive in here. So we've got all the pieces laid out, organized by color. Got the instructions set up on our flip pad there, and we've got our stand for our phone, and here we go. Starting off on the directions, first thing we did, again, this was different from the original. We're not building on a base plate. We did the MILS, and one of the reasons for that is we want to, with all of the modulars that we've been doing in this series, make sure they're consistent with the same bright green for the backyard. So we put those plates on the back here, and then we got the light bluish gray plates on the front. So I've never built this set before. What we're going to do here is go through it once. I think you're going to see there's a couple little things I'm going to adjust as we're building, and then once we get to the end, I might go back and revisit. Here's one of the little edits that we're doing as we go. This stairwell is not designed very well. It kind of goes up and then it does a hard 90-degree turn to the right, with those steps are kind of piling up on each other. And I just made this little change here. Notice that little angled piece we put in there to make that a little bit less severe on the stairwell going up. Again, that piece, I think it was around when this set was designed, but again, it just wasn't used here. So again, just little things like that I'm looking for as I'm going through this build the first time. One other little change that we actually decided when we were parting this out, there was around that front door there on the left, there was some stickered pieces, with some pattern on some light brown tiles. I decided against getting those. Again, they were pretty expensive and they look kind of silly anyway. So you can see there, I just went for a little bit different color to differentiate them a little bit. But again, didn't want to pay for those expensive stickered pieces. So as we dive into the second floor, this is where you really get into all of the sand green pieces. So this is my bin of extra sand green, so we want to keep that handy. That's going to come in handy because of the substitution we told you about earlier, where we were eliminating those 1x2 pieces with the channels because those are so expensive. And instead we're using those masonry bricks, which are tremendously cheaper, but also can still give a little bit of a textured look to the front of this. And you can see them as I'm putting them in there. I'm putting in those bricks backwards, so we're seeing kind of the back of the brick exposed. I really like the texture that's creating. But the problem when we were doing that is I kind of had to rebuild a little bit, especially in the front left, to make sure we had that pattern go all the way across the building. You needed some extra sand green pieces to make it really work. And here's how that second floor looks with that change. I really like this. Now here's a close-up of how that looks, and hopefully you can get a better sense of why I had to rebuild part of it. In the far corner here, you can see the gap there between, the pieces. On the far left here, in the original, this was not, those channeled pieces just went down next on either side of the windows. I wanted to create this pattern I created here. I wanted to clear all the way across. So I wanted to go to the edge of the building too. So that means I had to rebuild from what was in the directions, just this corner, so we could carry this horizontal channel all the way through. And you can see it's going through there in the back. Again, it was just needed a few extra sand green pieces, and thankfully I had a few to make that work. So now that the second floor is complete, we can dive into the third floor. And one thing you notice with the Green Grocer that's different from modern modulars is these inside spaces. There's not much to them. They don't add a whole lot of theming on the inside. One little thing that I am pointing out here, though, was kind of fun. This radiator piece that is called for on the third floor. Uh, Again, love these little details, and that's one of the things the modern modulars really do well with really every square inch of the build. Not such with these older modulars. You find a few things like this, but not very much. And I think we're going to revisit that a little bit after we get this built. But I wanted to point out this little radiator, again, just built with a couple of bars and a couple of extra Technic pieces. An easy build, and it looks kind of fun sitting there underneath that window on the third floor. Adds a little bit of character to an otherwise very bland build. I did like the technique that's used on the creating the gray part of the roof here, in the lower right here on top of that extended white window. That is a fun little technique that I think I've seen a couple other times in other builds, but I will definitely be using that myself, I'm sure. And now that we have the second and third floor done, you can see how I carried that pattern with the back of the masonry bricks up to the top of the building. Now we dive into the roof, and this was a fun little addition, this rooftop terrace on the back of the building. This was kind of fun. Didn't realize this was part of the set. And I love the extra little details that Lego puts into these sets. And this is the first time I remember seeing a grill, which you can see on the back of this terrace. Again, this was just a couple extra pieces, not really hard to build, just a fun little addition. And we put the roof on, and there we have it. completed Green Grocer from 2008 with a couple of piece substitutions, but overall this is pretty close to the original build. And I think this is really held up pretty well design-wise 17 years later. But we're still going to do some tinkering with this. Let's start with the ground floor. There's three things I've identified that I think can be improved upon. Number one, the grocer inside here, it's a neat space. I like the tile flooring, but there's a lot of, if it's a real grocery, there's a lot more stuff that can be put in here. Again, this is one of those things with older modulars. They didn't pack in the details like the modern modulars do. So we're going to revisit that. Second thing that we're going to look at is this backyard, very plain. I think we could use a patio here by that back door. And if this is a grocery here, maybe they're growing some stuff back here to sell. So that's something I want to think about. The other thing, it's hard to see here with this view, but I really don't like, there's this dead space in here underneath the stairs that is literally just hanging open. It's kind of weird. Let's do something for real with that. I know we just built this, but to rebuild it correctly with some of the changes we want to make, we got to tear it up and kind of start from scratch in a few spots. Starting on the grocery side, we just want to add a lot more items to sell. There's a lot of dead space in here. So put together this little thing of shelves that's going to sit right in the middle of that space. Looks a lot busier, but also a lot more realistic, like an actual grocer. So we see added some things behind the counter and along that wall. Also, one thing we did, we tore up that stairwell, which was designed so poorly, extended it out one brick so that we could redesign those stairs. Now to fix that open spot under the stairs, I moved those mailboxes back there. That opened up an opportunity at the front where those mailboxes were to add in a fun little addition, I think. Just put together this little vending machine, which doesn't take up a whole lot of space, but I think is pretty neat. And it drops right into that spot where the mailboxes were sitting. I think that is a lot more fun. And again, it fills up that empty spot in the back. Now we've updated the inside of the ground floor. Let's turn this around. And I think we've got some opportunity to do some fun stuff back here. I think it makes sense to lean into the grocery theme. So I think in the backyard here, we can add a few more items to sale and perhaps a garden. So you see a pumpkin patch there that we've added. And then also, this was really fun to come up with that garden and that technique there with using those stems and other pieces. So I think this turned out pretty nice. Now I move to the top floors, and structurally, we want to make an adjustment to this funny angled window here at the front. Not a big fan of, they kind of left, there's no flooring there in the angled part, which, maybe when this was designed, I'm not sure if these pieces were available necessarily. I know these jumpers were available. So what we're doing here is putting row of jumpers in. And then what we have here is this piece right here. This angle pretty closely mirrors what's happening here. And all we do then is there's a couple plates on the bottom to give it some leverage. And that just goes in, sits like that. It's pretty solid, almost perfectly covers the angles there. And now there's actual flooring there in that window. So this is the second floor. We're going to do the same thing up on the third floor. Now let's work on a theme for this second floor. And I've already done a little bit of prep work here. Changed the color of the curtains from dark red to black and added a railing here on the stairwell with the dark green. So what I'd like to do is turn this into a tattoo parlor. Got a chair here for people to sit in. We've got some comfy chair for people to lounge in while they're waiting. There's a sofa with the same theme, and then some of the other tools that you might see. Here's a light. Here is, a stool for the tattoo artist to sit on, some tools. I had used this theme in another building in a previous city, and I thought it was pretty fun. So really liked how this turned out, and I really love using the magenta color. The third floor of the Green Grocer is a blank canvas, which I love. We want a theme for this. And I'm thinking with the way this floor plan is, let's make this an apartment, probably for the owner of the tattoo parlor that is on the second floor. Now we're going to start off with this little bed, put over here by the clock. And then I've got a couple end tables for this bedroom area back here. So we're going to put one here with a light on it, and then just another one in this other corner. And then the bed fits in just like that. Now this area in the middle, I want to make into a little kitchen. Now let me show you first what we started with here. Notice this little notch in the wall back here? I just added that, and here's why. So I'm thinking about how I want to lay out this kitchen. Look, I've got myself here a refrigerator. What I'd like to do is have the refrigerator sit at an angle here, and we're going to build cabinets around it. Now let me show you what I did here. On the back of this refrigerator, I just added these little roof shapes on the back. So what's going to happen then is I put this swivel here. We're going to put this in place just like this. Now what happens is, let me pick this up and show you, those angled pieces fit right into that notch that I've built back there. So it's going to keep this thing from wobbling. And then I just add at the very top this little plate. You stick it on top there, and look, that thing does not wobble at all. Fun little way to anchor ourselves a diagonal refrigerator that's not going to move around. Now we're going to work on the rest of the kitchen. We start with a little tile floor. I thought the black and the white made a very nice contrast and fit with the decor. And as far as the decor, I had a bunch of the lime cabinet pieces, and I thought those looked all right with the other green. So I went ahead and leaned into that a little bit and used that to build the little range and this little bar area that we're putting in right here. There we're putting the sink in. Nice little kitchen area, I think. Then we add just a couple of chairs there. So we created a little bar for people to sit at and eat. Then one more addition, we got a comfy chair we're going to put in that window area there, so our apartment owner can sit there and look out that picture window. So here is the finished third floor. Was an empty space, now it's an apartment. Our updates to the Green Grocer modular are complete. I would love to hear what you guys have to think about everything that we adjusted, including probably the number one thing is changing the sand green channel pieces on the outside to these masonry bricks. That saved us probably a couple $100. Now, one more little change that I want to show you, and this just is a perfect example of the difference between Lego sets of 15 years ago, like when this came out, which was actually 2008, and sets today. Look at these flower pots right up here. They are 2 studs wide, okay? But they're sitting against this red area is 3 studs, and the 2 studs is sitting there. Now, it's just sitting there. You'd think it's a little minor detail, but this is the kind of thing, take this off. If I change this piece right here from a regular 1x1 plate to one of these round ones that have a hole in it, which by the way, this wasn't available in 2008, put this up here instead, and then that little hole, you can hang this flower pot actually in the middle. So see, instead of it being lopsided, looks a lot better when it's centered just like that. Great example of how Lego has evolved in the past 15 years or so.